Standing in my garage workshop at 3 a.m., covered in grease and surrounded by scattered blueprints, I heard the words that would haunt me for years. Marcus, you're 42 years old, and you're still playing with toys in the garage like a child. You'll never amount to anything. My wife Victoria's voice cut through the silence like a blade, her designer heels clicking against the concrete floor as she surveyed my latest invention with undisguised contempt. What she didn't know was that the toy she was mocking would soon become worth $50 million, and her cruel words would be the catalyst for the most satisfying revenge I'd ever orchestrate. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the mechanical components I'd been assembling for the past 18 months. Victoria stood in the doorway wearing the silk nightgown I'd bought her for our anniversary, her perfectly manicured arms crossed in frustration. Behind her, through the open door connecting our garage to the main house, I could see the remnants of another dinner I'd missed, another evening she'd spent alone while I pursued what she called my ridiculous obsession. "You're embarrassing us, Marcus." Victoria stepped closer, her voice dropping to that particular tone she used when she wanted to inflict maximum damage. "The neighbors think you've lost your mind. Janet Morrison asked me at the country club if you were having some kind of midlife breakdown, tinkering out here every night like a mad scientist." I wiped my hands on an oil-stained rag, not looking up from the precision gear system I'd been calibrating. "This isn't tinkering, Vic. I'm developing a revolutionary mechanism that could change how industrial robotics function forever. The servo motor integration alone represents a breakthrough that major manufacturers would pay millions to license." She laughed, but there was no warmth in the sound. It echoed off the concrete walls like breaking glass. "Millions? Marcus, you've been saying that about every project for the past 5 years. Remember the water filtration system that was going to make us rich? Or the solar panel design that was supposed to revolutionize renewable energy? You spent our vacation fund on prototypes that are gathering dust in storage boxes." The criticism stung because it contained kernels of truth. My previous inventions had shown promise but failed to achieve commercial success. Patent applications that went nowhere, prototypes that worked perfectly in my controlled environment but couldn't scale for mass production. Brilliant ideas that arrived at the market just 6 months too late. But this time was different. This time, I had something that would work. "I've been in contact with Titan Industries," I said, finally meeting her gaze. "Their head of research and development is interested in seeing the prototype next month. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for." Victoria's expression shifted from annoyance to something approaching pity. "Marcus, honey, I say this because I love you, but you need to face reality. You're not Thomas Edison. You're not Steve Jobs. You're a 42-year-old electrical engineer who works for a small consulting firm and spends his nights chasing fantasies in his garage." Her words hit harder than any physical blow could have. We'd been married for 15 years, and she'd supported my inventive pursuits in the beginning. Back when we were young and optimistic, she'd bring me sandwiches during late-night work sessions, ask questions about my designs, even help with simple assembly tasks. Somewhere along the way, her enthusiasm had curdled into resentment. "The consulting firm pays our mortgage," Victoria continued, her voice gaining momentum like a prosecuting attorney delivering closing arguments. "It provides health insurance, retirement savings, stability. These garage projects are costing us money we don't have and time you should be spending with your family. When was the last time we had dinner together? When did you last help Emma with her homework?" Emma was our 14-year-old daughter, brilliant and curious like her father, but increasingly distant as my workshop hours consumed more of my attention. Victoria's accusation about neglecting our daughter carried particular weight because I knew she was right. I'd missed soccer games, school plays, family dinners, all in pursuit of the perfect invention that would justify every sacrifice. "This prototype is different," I insisted, gesturing toward the sleek metal housing that contained months of careful engineering. The torque efficiency ratings are unprecedented. The power consumption is 30% lower than anything currently on the market. If Titan Industries licenses this technology, we're talking about generational wealth, Vic. Emma's college fund, our retirement, everything we've ever worried about financially. Victoria walked over to my workbench, examining the scattered technical drawings with the detached interest of someone inspecting evidence of mental illness. These diagrams look like every other project you've worked on. Complex, impressive to you, completely meaningless to the rest of the world. Do you know what Emma told her guidance counselor last week when they asked about her father's occupation? She said you were unemployed. The revelation hit me like a physical punch. Emma was ashamed of me. My brilliant, curious daughter, who used to sit on my lap while I explained how electric motors worked, now told strangers I was unemployed rather than admit her father was an inventor. The weight of that betrayal settled in my chest like a stone. "I work 40 hours a week at Henderson & Associates," I said quietly. "Emma knows that perfectly well. She also knows I'm trying to build something meaningful, something that could secure her future in ways a regular paycheck never could." "What she knows," Victoria replied, her voice softening with what might have been genuine sadness, "is that her father cares more about imaginary success than real life. She sees you choosing this garage over family dinners, choosing hypothetical millions over actual presents. You're gambling away the best years of our lives on dreams that will never come true." The accusation stung, because Victoria wasn't entirely wrong. I had become obsessed, spending every free moment in the workshop, sacrificing family time and social connections in pursuit of the perfect invention. But she couldn't understand the burning need that drove me, the absolute certainty that I was capable of creating something revolutionary if I could just push through the obstacles. "Give me 6 months," I said, looking directly into her eyes. "If the Titan Industries meeting doesn't result in a licensing deal, I'll stop. I'll sell all the equipment, clean out the garage, and focus entirely on family and my regular job. But please, just give me this chance to prove that everything we've sacrificed will be worth it." Victoria studied my face for a long moment, perhaps seeing the desperation I was trying to hide. "Marcus, you've asked for just 6 more months 3 times in the past 2 years. I'm tired of living with a husband who's physically here, but mentally always somewhere else. I'm tired of explaining to friends why you're not at social gatherings. I'm tired of feeling like a single mother raising our daughter alone." She turned toward the door, then paused with her hand on the frame. "You want to know what I really think? I think you're afraid of actual success in the real world, so you've created this fantasy where you're on the verge of some major breakthrough that justifies all your failures. It's safer to chase impossible dreams than to work toward achievable goals." With that devastating psychological assessment, she disappeared into the house, leaving me alone with my prototype and the echo of her contempt. The fluorescent lights continued their relentless buzzing, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked at nothing in particular. I looked down at my invention, this mechanical marvel that represented 18 months of careful engineering and unlimited hope, and wondered if she was right. Maybe I was delusional. Maybe this beautiful piece of precision machinery was just another expensive hobby destined to join the graveyard of abandoned prototypes in my storage unit. Maybe Victoria's harsh words contained the brutal honesty I'd been avoiding. Maybe I would never amount to anything more than a small-town electrical engineer with delusions of grandeur. But even as doubt crept in, I couldn't shake the feeling that this time was different. The servo mechanism I'd developed solved a fundamental problem that had plagued industrial robotics for decades. The power efficiency ratings weren't just impressive in my garage laboratory, they represented a breakthrough that could revolutionize automated manufacturing. Titan Industries wouldn't have agreed to a meeting unless their research team saw genuine potential. I spent the rest of that night fine-tuning calibrations, adjusting gear ratios, and perfecting the control algorithms that made my invention work. By sunrise, my back ached from hunching over the workbench, my eyes burned from squinting at tiny components, and my hands were stained with machine oil that would take days to completely wash away. But the prototype hummed with smooth precision, every moving part synchronized in mechanical harmony that bordered on art. The house was quiet when I finally went inside. Victoria had left for her job at the marketing agency, and Emma had already caught her school bus. A note on the kitchen counter, written in Victoria's precise handwriting, reminded me about Emma's parent-teacher conference that evening at 7. I'd promised to attend 3 months ago before the Titan Industries opportunity consumed my attention. Standing in our empty kitchen, still wearing yesterday's work clothes and smelling like motor oil, I tried to see myself through Victoria's eyes. A middle-aged man, clinging to adolescent dreams of grandeur, neglecting real responsibilities in pursuit of imaginary victories. From that perspective, her frustration made perfect sense. From that perspective, I looked like a failure. But failure was a luxury I couldn't afford, not when I was this close to vindication. The next 4 weeks passed in a blur of preparation and anxiety. During the day, I maintained my facade of normalcy at Henderson & Associates, reviewing electrical specifications and consulting on industrial installations. My colleagues had no idea that their quiet, reliable coworker was secretly developing technology that could make them wealthy beyond their wildest imagination. Evenings were spent refining my presentation for Titan Industries, creating technical documentation that would clearly demonstrate my invention's revolutionary potential. I practiced explaining complex engineering concepts in terms that business executives could understand, rehearsing responses to every possible objection or technical question. Victoria and I maintained a cold truce during those weeks. She stopped visiting the garage entirely, and our dinner conversations focused exclusively on Emma's school activities and household logistics. The subject of my invention became forbidden territory, an unspoken agreement that preserved our marriage's fragile stability while I pursued my last chance at validation. Emma, perceptive as always, sensed the tension between her parents. She asked careful questions about my work, clearly hoping to bridge the growing distance between us. I wanted to share my excitement about the upcoming meeting, to explain why these sacrifices would soon prove worthwhile, but Victoria's warnings about false hope kept me silent. "You're going to make it to the parent-teacher conference Thursday, right, Dad?" Emma asked one evening while we waited for Victoria to serve dinner. "Miss Patterson wants to discuss my science fair project, and I told her you might have some good ideas, since you're always working on inventions." "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, though the conference conflicted with my final prototype testing session. "I'll be there. We can talk about whatever project you have in mind." Victoria entered the dining room carrying a casserole dish, her expression carefully neutral. "It would mean a lot to Emma if you actually showed up this time," she said, without looking at me. "She's been disappointed before." The comment was calculated to sting, a reminder of previous occasions when workshop emergencies had forced me to miss family commitments. I wanted to defend myself, to explain that those missed events were investments in our family's future, but I'd learned that such arguments only escalated our conflicts. Thursday evening arrived with the inevitability of a court date. The parent-teacher conference was scheduled for 7, and my final prototype testing couldn't be postponed. Titan Industries had moved our meeting up by 2 days, giving me less preparation time than I'd hoped. Every hour of testing was crucial. At 6:30, I was still in the garage, running the servo mechanism through stress tests that would demonstrate its reliability under industrial conditions. The machine performed flawlessly, but I wanted additional data points to strengthen my presentation. Just 15 more minutes would provide the statistical confidence I needed. "Marcus!" Victoria's voice cut through the garage like an alarm. "We need to leave for the school right now or we'll be late." I looked up from my testing equipment, calculating whether I could complete the stress analysis and still make the conference. The numbers were close, but possible if we drove quickly and the teacher stayed on schedule. "Give me 10 more minutes," I called back. "I'm almost finished with these tests." The silence that followed felt dangerous, pregnant with the accumulated resentment of 15 years. When Victoria finally spoke, her voice carried a finality I'd never heard before. "No, Marcus. Not 10 minutes, not 5 minutes. Right now, or don't bother coming at all." The ultimatum hung in the air between us like smoke from an explosion. I could feel the weight of this moment, understanding that my response would determine far more than whether I attended Emma's parent-teacher conference. This was Victoria drawing a line in the sand, forcing me to choose between my invention and my family. "I'll be there in 5 minutes," I said, shutting down the testing equipment with reluctant efficiency. The prototype would have to be good enough as it was. Some things were more important than perfect data. But even as I locked the garage and followed Victoria to our car, I couldn't shake the feeling that those 5 minutes of additional testing might have made all the difference. In the world of precision engineering, small margins often determined success or failure. I prayed that my compromise wouldn't cost me everything I'd worked so hard to achieve. The parent-teacher conference proceeded normally, Miss Patterson praising Emma's academic performance and discussing her science fair project ideas. I participated fully, asking relevant questions and offering suggestions, but part of my mind remained in the garage with my unfinished tests. Victoria noticed my distraction, her disappointed glances serving as silent accusations throughout the meeting. Emma's proposed science fair project involved designing a more efficient water filtration system, a topic that naturally aligned with my engineering expertise. As I explained various filtration technologies and helped her brainstorm innovative approaches, I saw a spark of genuine interest in her eyes that reminded me why family relationships mattered more than any invention. "You really think I could build something that would make a difference?" Emma asked as we walked to our car after the conference. "Something that might actually help people?" "Absolutely," I replied, putting my arm around her shoulders. "You have the same curiosity and problem-solving instincts that drive all great inventors. The key is persistence, never giving up when you know you're working on something important." Victoria shot me a warning look, clearly concerned that I was passing my obsessive tendencies to our daughter. But Emma's excitement about her project filled me with hope. Maybe my years of workshop dedication weren't entirely selfish. Maybe I was showing our daughter that pursuing meaningful work, even in the face of criticism and doubt, was worth the struggle. The Titan Industries meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at their corporate headquarters in downtown Chicago. I'd never been inside a building that large or intimidating. 47 floors of steel and glass housing one of America's most successful industrial conglomerates. My little prototype, carefully packed in a foam-lined carrying case, seemed insignificant against such corporate grandeur. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor felt endless, my stomach churning with a combination of excitement and terror. Everything I'd worked toward for the past 18 months would be decided in the next 2 hours. Either my invention would prove its worth, or I'd return home to face Victoria's inevitable "I told you so" with no defense except broken dreams. Dr. Sarah Chen, Titan's head of research and development, greeted me in a conference room overlooking the Chicago skyline. She was younger than I'd expected, probably in her early 40s, with the focused intensity of someone accustomed to evaluating revolutionary technologies on a daily basis. 2 other engineers flanked her, both taking notes as I unpacked my prototype. "Mr. Hendricks," Dr. Chen said, settling into her chair with professional efficiency, "your initial specifications caught our attention because they address a persistent challenge in our robotic assembly systems. However, we evaluate hundreds of promising prototypes each year. What makes your servo mechanism uniquely valuable?" The question I'd been preparing for arrived exactly as expected, but my mouth went dry as I looked at the 3 skeptical faces across the conference table. These people could make me wealthy beyond imagination, or they could dismiss me as another delusional inventor wasting their valuable time. Everything depended on the next few minutes. I activated my prototype, and the servo mechanism began its carefully choreographed demonstration. Smooth, precise movements that would have been impossible with conventional technology filled the conference room with mechanical music. The engineers leaned forward, their expressions shifting from polite interest to genuine fascination as they observed the unprecedented efficiency of my design. "The power consumption is 37% lower than your current servo systems," I explained, pointing to real-time measurements displayed on my laptop. The torque output remains constant across the entire operational range, eliminating the performance degradation that typically occurs under heavy loads. This combination of efficiency and reliability could reduce your manufacturing costs by millions annually. Dr. Chen examined the mechanical components with the practiced eye of someone who understood precision engineering. Your gear ratio calculations appear sound, but how does the system perform under sustained industrial conditions? Our assembly lines operate continuously for months without maintenance windows. I'd anticipated this question, having spent countless hours testing durability and longevity. The stress analysis shows stable performance for over 10,000 operational hours without significant wear. The bearing assemblies use aerospace-grade materials designed for extreme conditions. This isn't just laboratory equipment, Dr. Chen. It's built for real-world industrial application. For the next 90 minutes, I fielded technical questions that challenged every aspect of my design. The engineers probed for weaknesses, tested my understanding of manufacturing scalability, demanded proof that my invention could perform reliably in their harsh industrial environment. I answered every question with confidence, backed by months of meticulous testing and documentation. Finally, Dr. Chen leaned back in her chair, exchanging glances with her colleagues. Mr. Hendricks, your servo mechanism represents a significant advancement over current technology. We're prepared to offer a licensing agreement with an initial payment of $12 million, plus royalties of 8% on all units manufactured using your design. The conference room seemed to spin around me as I processed her words. $12 million, plus royalties that could generate additional millions annually if Titan Industries achieved their projected manufacturing volumes. In a single sentence, Dr. Chen had validated every sacrifice, every late night in the garage, every moment of doubt and criticism. "I accept," I managed to say, though my voice sounded strange and distant to my own ears. "When can we finalize the paperwork?" "Our legal team will prepare the contracts within 2 weeks." Dr. Chen stood, extending her hand for a congratulatory handshake. "Congratulations, Mr. Hendricks. Your invention is going to make both our companies very successful." The elevator ride down felt like floating through clouds. $12 million. In 2 weeks, I would go from struggling middle-class engineer to genuinely wealthy inventor. Victoria would never again have cause to question my abilities or mock my garage workshop. Emma would have her college education fully funded, with enough left over to pursue any career she chose. But more important than the money was the validation. 3 respected engineers from one of America's most successful corporations had recognized my work as revolutionary. I wasn't a delusional failure chasing impossible dreams. I was an inventor who had created something genuinely valuable, something that would change how industrial robots functioned around the world. The drive home from Chicago passed in a euphoric haze. I rehearsed different ways to share the news with Victoria, imagining her shocked expression when I explained that her 42-year-old failure of a husband had just secured their family's financial future. The cruel words she'd spoken in the garage would become the prologue to our success story, the moment when she'd underestimated what I was capable of achieving. I arrived home to find Victoria and Emma in the kitchen, working together on homework while dinner simmered on the stove. The domestic scene looked exactly as it had that morning, but everything had changed. I was no longer the struggling dreamer they'd learned to tolerate. I was Marcus Hendricks, successful inventor, holder of a technology patent worth millions of dollars. "How did the meeting go?" Victoria asked without looking up from Emma's math worksheet. Her tone suggested she expected another disappointed report, another evening of consoling her husband's bruised ego after facing reality. "Better than expected," I replied, setting my briefcase on the counter with deliberate casualness. "Titan Industries wants to license my servo mechanism." Victoria glanced up, probably preparing sympathetic words about how licensing opportunities sometimes took years to develop into actual contracts. The expression on my face must have conveyed something different because her polite smile faltered. They made an offer, I continued, savoring the moment before delivering news that would change our lives forever. $12 million up front, plus royalties on every unit they manufacture. We're going to be very wealthy, Victoria. The kitchen fell silent, except for the gentle bubbling of whatever was cooking on the stove. Emma looked between her parents, clearly sensing the magnitude of this announcement, but not fully comprehending its implications. Victoria stared at me with an expression I couldn't read, somewhere between shock and disbelief. 12? She whispered. They're actually paying $12 million for your garage invention? Plus royalties, I confirmed, pulling out the preliminary agreement Dr. Chen had given me to review. Their legal team expects to finalize the contracts within 2 weeks. Everything you said about my workshop being a waste of time, about me never amounting to anything, about chasing impossible dreams, it was all wrong, Victoria. Dead wrong. The words came out harder than I'd intended, carrying 18 months of accumulated resentment and vindication. Victoria had the decency to look embarrassed, but I wasn't finished. I had years of criticism and mockery to answer. "Do you remember what you told me that night in the garage?" I asked, my voice gaining strength as I finally had the ammunition to fight back. "You said I would never amount to anything. You said I was embarrassing us, that I was afraid of real success. You compared me to a child playing with toys." "Dad," Emma said uncertainly, clearly uncomfortable with the tension crackling between her parents. "Maybe we should celebrate instead of arguing about old stuff." "Your father's right to be upset," Victoria said quietly. "I said some very harsh things when I was frustrated. I didn't believe this could really happen." "You didn't just disbelieve," I continued, the words pouring out like water through a broken dam. "You actively tried to discourage me. You made me feel like a failure every single day. You told our daughter I was unemployed rather than admit I was working on something important. You made me choose between family obligations and the work that just made us millionaires." Victoria's face had gone pale, but she didn't attempt to defend herself. How could she? Every word I'd spoken was true, and we both knew it. She'd been wrong about everything, catastrophically wrong. And now the evidence of her misjudgment was sitting on our kitchen counter in the form of a $12 million licensing agreement. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I was wrong about your invention, wrong about your abilities, wrong to say such cruel things. But Marcus, you have to understand how it looked from my perspective. 5 years of failed projects, missed family events, money spent on equipment that never paid off. I was trying to protect our family from financial disaster and emotional disappointment." Her explanation was rational, even understandable, but it couldn't erase the damage her words had caused. During the darkest moments of self-doubt, when technical problems seemed insurmountable and success felt impossible, I'd heard her voice telling me I would never amount to anything. Those words had nearly broken my resolve completely. "The difference between us," I said, looking directly into her eyes, "is that I never stopped believing in what we could accomplish together. Even when you lost faith in me, even when you mocked my work and demanded that I give up, I kept working because I knew this family deserved better than settling for mediocrity." Emma had been watching our exchange with growing distress, clearly torn between pride in her father's success and concern about her parents' conflict. "Marcus, she's apologizing," Emma said. "Can't we just be happy about the good news instead of fighting about who was wrong?" My daughter's mature wisdom cut through my anger like a cold wind. She was right, of course. This should be a moment of pure celebration, the culmination of everything I'd worked toward. But Victoria's casual cruelty had wounded me more deeply than I'd realized, and success didn't automatically heal those psychological scars. "You're absolutely right, Emma," I said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "This is incredible news for our family. Your college education is completely secure. We can finally take that European vacation your mother has wanted, and I can quit my consulting job to focus on developing more inventions." Victoria nodded, clearly grateful for the change in tone. I really am proud of what you've accomplished, Marcus, and I'm sorry for doubting you so harshly. I hope you can forgive me for being wrong about something so important. The apology sounded sincere, but it felt insufficient somehow. Words couldn't undo years of psychological damage, couldn't restore the confidence she'd systematically eroded with her criticism and contempt. Forgiveness would take time, and trust would have to be rebuilt through actions rather than apologies. "We'll figure it out," I said diplomatically. "Right now, let's focus on what this means for our future. Emma, what do you think about having a father who's officially a successful inventor?" Emma grinned, her natural enthusiasm finally breaking through her concern about the family tension. "It's pretty awesome, Dad. Can I tell my friends that my father is famous now?" "You can tell anyone you want," I replied, finally feeling genuinely happy about the news. "Just remember that success comes from hard work and persistence, not luck. If you want to accomplish something meaningful, you can't let other people's doubts stop you from trying."
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
The message was directed at Emma, but Victoria clearly understood its broader implications. She'd tried to stop me from trying, and if I'd listened to her advice, we'd still be struggling financially while my revolutionary invention gathered dust in storage. Her doubt had nearly cost us everything. That evening, after Emma went to bed, Victoria and I sat on our back porch discussing the practical implications of sudden wealth. $12 million would completely transform our lifestyle, eliminating financial stress that had shadowed our marriage for years. We could pay off our mortgage immediately, establish generous college funds, travel anywhere in the world, buy whatever we wanted without checking our bank balance first. But beneath the excitement lurked unresolved tension about how we'd reached this point. Victoria's apologies couldn't erase the memory of her standing in my garage, telling me I would never amount to anything while I worked on the invention that had just made us millionaires. Success had vindicated my persistence, but it had also highlighted her lack of faith in devastatingly clear terms. "I keep thinking about that night when I said those terrible things," Victoria admitted as we watched stars emerge in the darkening sky. "I was so frustrated about missed dinners and ignored family obligations that I completely lost sight of what you were trying to accomplish. I should have been supporting your dreams instead of attacking them." "You weren't just frustrated that night," I replied. "You were cruel, deliberately cruel. You questioned my competence, my intelligence, my worth as a husband and father. Those weren't words spoken in temporary anger, Victoria. They came from somewhere deeper." She was quiet for a long moment, perhaps finally understanding how profoundly her criticism had affected me. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more vulnerable than I'd heard in years. "I think I was scared," she said. "Scared that you really were chasing impossible dreams, that we'd end up bankrupt and broken while you pursued fantasies. It felt safer to crush your hopes than to risk disappointment. I was trying to protect us from failure, but I was also protecting myself from believing in something that might not work out." Her honesty was disarming, revealing fears I hadn't fully understood during our conflicts. Victoria hadn't just doubted my abilities, she'd been terrified of hoping for something better, preferring the security of limited expectations to the risk of dreaming big. In that context, her cruelty became a defensive mechanism rather than pure malice. But understanding her motivations didn't excuse the damage she'd caused. There's a difference between expressing concern and systematically undermining someone's confidence, I said. "You made me feel like a failure every single day. You made our daughter ashamed of her father's work. You nearly convinced me to give up on something that turned out to be worth millions." Victoria nodded, tears reflecting the porch light as she finally grasped the full weight of what she'd done. "I was wrong, Marcus. Completely, utterly wrong. I don't know how to make up for that kind of mistake." The answer to her question would determine whether our marriage could survive this success, whether we could build a new relationship based on mutual respect rather than her contempt for my dreams. Forgiveness was possible, but it would require fundamental changes in how we treated each other's aspirations and abilities. "We'll figure it out," I said again, the phrase becoming a placeholder for more complex emotions I wasn't ready to fully express. Right now, I just want to enjoy knowing that everything I sacrificed was worth it. Every late night, every missed dinner, every moment of doubt, it all led to this validation. The Titan Industries contract arrived exactly 2 weeks later, 47 pages of legal language that formally transferred $12 million to my bank account in exchange for licensing rights to my servo mechanism design. Signing those documents felt like crossing a threshold into a completely different life, leaving behind decades of financial struggle and social uncertainty. Victoria was present for the signing, her behavior noticeably different since learning about the licensing deal. She asked thoughtful questions about the technical specifications, showed genuine interest in my work, and treated my opinions with newfound respect. The transformation was gratifying, but also somewhat hollow, since it had required overwhelming success to earn consideration I should have received regardless. Emma's reaction to our changed circumstances was more purely positive. She embraced the security that wealth provided without dwelling on the family conflicts that had preceded our good fortune. Her science fair project, a water filtration system that incorporated principles from my servo mechanism design, won first place in the regional competition and qualified for state-level judging. Watching Emma accept her award, I felt a satisfaction that transcended financial success. My daughter was developing into a capable engineer, confident in her abilities and unafraid to pursue ambitious projects. Unlike her mother, Emma had never doubted that persistence and innovation could lead to meaningful achievement. The months following the Titan Industries deal brought changes I'd dreamed about for years. I resigned from Henderson & Associates, converting my garage workshop into a proper research laboratory, and began developing additional inventions that could generate similar licensing opportunities. Money was no longer a constraint. I could afford the finest equipment, premium materials, and unlimited time to perfect my designs. Victoria quit her marketing job as well, focusing on managing our investments and exploring philanthropic opportunities that aligned with our values. We established a scholarship fund for students pursuing engineering education, particularly those from families that couldn't afford college tuition. The irony wasn't lost on me that Victoria, who'd once mocked my technical pursuits, was now funding other inventors' educational dreams. But perhaps the most satisfying change was in how people treated me. Neighbors who'd previously regarded me as the eccentric guy with the messy garage now approached with respectful curiosity about my work. Professional colleagues who'd considered me a competent but unremarkable engineer suddenly sought my advice on their own projects. Dr. Chen from Titan Industries recommended me for speaking engagements at engineering conferences, where I shared the story of developing my servo mechanism against overwhelming skepticism. These presentations always included acknowledgement of family members who'd supported my work, though Victoria's presence in the audience felt more performative than genuine. The question that haunted me wasn't whether I'd achieved success, but whether that success had come at an acceptable cost. 18 months of obsessive focus had indeed produced a revolutionary invention worth millions of dollars. But they'd also created distance between me and my family that money couldn't automatically repair. Emma seemed to understand this complexity better than her mother. During a conversation about my conference speaking, she made an observation that cut straight to the heart of my dilemma. "Dad," she said, as we worked together on her latest engineering project, "I'm proud of what you accomplished, and I'm glad we don't have to worry about money anymore. But I sometimes wonder if you would have been happy even if the invention hadn't worked out, as long as you knew you'd tried your best." Her question revealed a wisdom beyond her 15 years, recognizing that external validation couldn't provide the internal satisfaction that came from pursuing meaningful work. My daughter understood something that had taken me decades to learn. Success meant different things to different people, and financial achievement wasn't necessarily the most important measure of a life well lived. Victoria never quite grasped this nuance. Her apologies remained focused on being wrong about my invention's commercial potential rather than being wrong about the value of pursuing ambitious goals regardless of their outcome. She celebrated our wealth enthusiastically, but I sensed she would have felt vindicated rather than apologetic if my work had failed to generate millions. This difference in perspective became particularly clear during a dinner party we hosted for my former colleagues from Henderson & Associates. Victoria proudly described my transformation from consulting engineer to millionaire inventor, emphasizing the financial validation that had proved her wrong about my abilities. Marcus always knew this invention would make us rich, she told our guests, completely rewriting the history of our conflicts. I supported his work from the beginning because I could see how revolutionary his ideas were. The casual dishonesty was breathtaking, erasing years of criticism and contempt with a few sentences of revisionist fiction. Our guests had no reason to question her version of events, but I sat at my own dinner table listening to lies that painted Victoria as a supportive wife rather than the harshest critic my work had ever faced. Later that evening, after our guests had gone home, I confronted Victoria about her misleading statements. "You weren't supportive from the beginning," I said as we cleaned up dishes and wine glasses. "You told me I would never amount to anything. You actively tried to discourage my work. You can't rewrite history just because it turned out better than you expected." Victoria paused in loading our dishwasher, clearly uncomfortable with being called out on her fictional narrative. "I was trying to present our family in the best possible light," she said. "Our guests don't need to know about every private conversation we've ever had." "Those weren't private conversations," I replied. "They were systematic attacks on my confidence and competence. They nearly destroyed my ability to believe in my own work. You don't get to erase that damage just because acknowledging it might embarrass you at dinner parties." The argument that followed was one of our most honest since the night she'd attacked me in the garage. Victoria finally admitted that her current support felt hollow because it was conditional on success, that she couldn't guarantee she'd react differently if my next invention failed to generate millions. Her honesty was devastating and refreshing in equal measure. "I don't know how to unconditionally support something I don't understand," she said finally. "Your engineering work exists in a world I can't access, solving problems I can't even visualize. It's easier for me to measure success in financial terms because that's something concrete I can evaluate." Her confession explained much about our fundamental incompatibility, revealing that she'd never really understood or appreciated the intrinsic value of innovation and problem-solving. Victoria measured worth in social and financial terms, while I found satisfaction in creating solutions to technical challenges, regardless of their commercial potential. This realization forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about our marriage that wealth couldn't solve. Victoria had married an electrical engineer, not an inventor. She'd signed up for stability and predictability, not the emotional roller coaster of pursuing breakthrough innovations. My transformation into a successful inventor had fundamentally altered our relationship dynamic in ways neither of us had fully anticipated. The following months brought a parade of opportunities that validated my decision to pursue invention as a full-time career. Patent attorneys contacted me about protecting additional designs I developed as natural extensions of my servo mechanism work. Venture capital firms expressed interest in funding a startup company built around my innovations. International manufacturers requested licensing meetings for global distribution rights. Each new opportunity reinforced the magnitude of Victoria's miscalculation about my potential. The woman who'd told me I would never amount to anything was now married to someone whose technical expertise was sought by companies around the world. The irony was delicious, but it also highlighted the fragility of relationships built on limited understanding of each other's capabilities. Emma thrived in this environment of expanded possibilities. Her acceptance into MIT's early admission program for exceptional engineering students arrived with a full scholarship offer that we no longer needed, but that validated her independent merit. Watching her confidently discuss advanced mathematics and physics concepts with professors who recognized her talent, I felt proud that she'd inherited curiosity and determination rather than fear of ambitious goals. Victoria attended Emma's scholarship ceremony with appropriate maternal pride, but I noticed her discomfort when professors praised Emma's innovative thinking and willingness to tackle complex challenges. The same qualities Victoria had criticized in me were now being celebrated in our daughter, creating cognitive dissonance she struggled to resolve. After the ceremony, Emma pulled me aside for a private conversation that revealed her mature understanding of our family dynamics. "Dad," she said, "I want you to know that I'm proud of how you never gave up on your work, even when Mom didn't believe in it. That taught me something important about persistence and believing in yourself." Her words carried more validation than any licensing deal could provide. Emma had learned from watching my struggles that meaningful achievements required sustained effort despite criticism and doubt. She'd absorbed lessons about resilience and innovation that would serve her throughout her career. My example had taught her to pursue ambitious goals regardless of other people's limited expectations. But Emma's next comment revealed perceptions that concerned me. "I also learned that success can create problems in relationships if people can't handle being wrong about something important," she continued. "Mom seems happier now that we're wealthy, but she also seems angry about something she won't talk about directly." My 15-year-old daughter had identified the central tension in our marriage with startling clarity. Victoria was simultaneously grateful for our improved circumstances and resentful about being so completely wrong in her assessment of my potential. She couldn't fully enjoy our success because it served as a constant reminder of her failure to recognize or support my abilities when encouragement would have made the most difference. This psychological complexity became more apparent during a family vacation to Europe that Victoria had dreamed about for years. We stayed in luxury hotels, dined at acclaimed restaurants, and visited cultural landmarks that had previously been financially impossible. Victoria documented everything, creating social media narratives about our transformed lifestyle that emphasized material improvements while ignoring the personal costs of achieving them. In Paris, standing beneath the Eiffel Tower while Victoria photographed Emma and me for her Instagram account, I felt disconnected from the celebration she was orchestrating. The trip represented financial freedom I'd worked decades to achieve, but it also felt performative, designed to demonstrate our elevated status rather than create meaningful family memories. Emma seemed to share my ambivalence about turning our vacation into social media content. During a quiet moment at the Louvre, she asked why Mom was so focused on documenting everything instead of simply enjoying the experience. The question revealed her intuitive understanding that Victoria's behavior had more to do with external validation than internal satisfaction. "Your mother is proud of what we've accomplished," I explained diplomatically. "Sometimes people express pride differently than we might expect. She wants to share our good fortune with friends and family who supported us during more difficult times." But Emma's skeptical expression suggested she wasn't entirely convinced by my diplomatic interpretation. She'd observed Victoria's transformation from harsh critic to enthusiastic supporter, and she'd noticed the conditional nature of this change. Our daughter understood that Victoria's current pride was contingent on continued success rather than unconditional love and respect. The European vacation crystallized my growing awareness that wealth had solved our financial problems while creating new emotional challenges. Victoria's social media posts portrayed a happy family celebrating well-deserved success, but the reality was more complex. We were still learning how to be wealthy, still adjusting to changed circumstances, still working through resentments that money couldn't automatically resolve. Returning home to our expanded and renovated house, I found myself missing the simplicity of working in my garage workshop with limited resources and unlimited dreams. Success had brought comfort and recognition, but it had also introduced complications I hadn't anticipated. Licensing agreements required ongoing technical support, patent protection demanded legal vigilance, and financial management consumed time I'd previously devoted to pure research. Victoria hired a personal assistant to manage our calendar and correspondence, a housekeeper to maintain our larger living space, and a financial advisor to optimize our investment portfolio. Our life became more efficient but also more distant from the hands-on intimacy of building something together from nothing. Success had insulated us from struggle but also from the satisfaction that came from overcoming challenges through shared effort. The psychological distance between Victoria and me became most apparent during intimate conversations about our future plans. She focused on acquisition and status, discussing real estate purchases, luxury travel destinations, and social connections that our wealth made accessible. I remained more interested in technical challenges and innovative projects that could produce additional breakthrough technologies. These different priorities weren't necessarily incompatible, but they reflected fundamentally different value systems that wealth had highlighted rather than resolved. Victoria measured progress in terms of lifestyle improvements and social positioning, while I found fulfillment in solving complex problems regardless of their commercial implications. Money had amplified these differences rather than bridging them. During one particularly revealing conversation about purchasing a vacation home in the Caribbean, Victoria made a comment that exposed the depth of our philosophical divide. "Marcus," she said, "you've proven that your engineering skills can generate serious wealth. Now it's time to enjoy the fruits of your labor instead of disappearing into another workshop to chase the next big invention." Her suggestion that I should stop inventing felt like a betrayal more profound than her original criticism. Victoria wanted me to become a different person, someone who pursued leisure and luxury rather than innovation and discovery. She'd accepted my success, but not my identity as an inventor. The money had changed her perception of my value without changing her understanding of what motivated me. "I don't invent things for money," I explained, trying to help her understand the distinction. "I invent because solving complex problems gives my life meaning." The Titan Industries licensing deal was validation, not a retirement plan. I'm just getting started on projects that could be even more revolutionary than the servo mechanism. Victoria's expression revealed her frustration with my answer. She'd assumed that achieving financial security would satisfy whatever psychological need drove my workshop obsession. The possibility that I might prefer creating new technologies to enjoying existing wealth clearly hadn't occurred to her. We were operating from completely different definitions of success and happiness. This fundamental misalignment became a source of ongoing tension as Victoria planned social activities that required me to present myself as a successful businessman rather than an active inventor. She scheduled dinner parties with wealthy couples who discussed investment strategies and luxury purchases, charity events that emphasized our philanthropic capacity, and country club activities that showcased our elevated social status. I participated in these social obligations with polite reluctance, understanding their importance to Victoria while finding them intellectually unstimulating. Conversations about market performance and estate planning felt trivial compared to discussions about breakthrough technologies and innovative solutions to industrial challenges. I was wealthy now, but I remained fundamentally an engineer rather than a socialite. Emma noticed my discomfort at these gatherings and made perceptive observations about the different ways people define success. "Dad," she said, after a particularly tedious country club dinner, "you seem happier in your workshop than at fancy parties. Why do we have to do so many social things if they don't make you happy?" Her question cut straight to the heart of my dilemma. Victoria insisted that social engagement was an obligation of our improved circumstances, that wealthy people had responsibilities to participate in community leadership and philanthropic activities. But these expectations often conflicted with my preference for hands-on technical work that produced tangible innovations. The tension between social obligations and personal fulfillment intensified when Victoria volunteered me for the board of directors of the Regional Economic Development Council without consulting me first. The position carried significant prestige and influence over local business policy, but it also required attendance at weekly meetings that would consume time I preferred to spend on research and development. "I appreciate the opportunity," I told Victoria after learning about her unilateral commitment, "but I'm not interested in serving on boards or committees. That's not how I want to spend my time, and it's not what I'm good at. My expertise is engineering, not business administration or public policy." Victoria's response revealed her frustration with what she perceived as my failure to embrace the responsibilities of wealth. "Marcus," she said, "you can't just be a hermit in your workshop now that we're successful. People expect community leadership from families in our position. This is about more than your personal preferences." The argument that followed was one of our most heated since my invention had been licensed. Victoria accused me of being selfish and antisocial, unwilling to contribute to the community that had supported our success. I countered that forcing me into roles I wasn't suited for would benefit no one, that my most valuable contribution was continued innovation rather than ineffective committee participation. Emma watched this conflict with obvious distress, clearly torn between loyalty to both parents and concern about our escalating disagreements. Finally, she intervened with characteristic directness that cut through our circular arguments. "Why can't Dad do what he's good at and Mom do what she's good at?" she asked, instead of trying to make each other into different people. "Dad's contribution is inventing things that help companies work better. Mom's contribution could be representing our family in social and community activities. Why does everything have to be the same?" Her solution was elegant in its simplicity, recognizing that Victoria and I had complementary strengths that could serve different aspects of our public responsibilities. I could focus on technical innovation, while Victoria managed our social obligations and philanthropic commitments. The arrangement would allow each of us to contribute according to our abilities and interests. Victoria initially resisted this division of labor, arguing that successful couples should present a united front in all aspects of their public engagement. But Emma's logic was compelling, and even Victoria could see the practical advantages of allowing me to concentrate on activities that matched my expertise and temperament. The compromise we eventually reached reflected Emma's mature understanding of our different capabilities and preferences. Victoria would represent our family at social functions, serve on charitable boards, and manage community relationships that our wealth made possible. I would continue developing innovative technologies, provide technical consulting to local businesses, and establish a foundation to support engineering education. This arrangement reduced immediate conflicts about my social obligations while highlighting deeper issues about Victoria's need for external validation versus my preference for intrinsic satisfaction. She thrived on recognition and status that came from high-profile community involvement, while I found fulfillment in solving technical challenges regardless of whether anyone else understood or appreciated the work. The Engineering Education Foundation became my primary philanthropic focus, providing scholarships and research grants to students pursuing innovative projects similar to those I developed in my own garage workshop. Working with young inventors reminded me of the excitement I'd felt during those early days of discovery, when technical possibilities seemed limitless and commercial considerations were secondary concerns. Victoria supported the Foundation's mission, but remained puzzled by my preference for anonymous giving rather than publicity that would enhance our social reputation. She couldn't understand why I insisted on confidential donations when public recognition could have elevated our community standing. The distinction between doing good work and being seen doing good work seemed meaningless to her. These philosophical differences became more pronounced as my second major invention neared completion. Building on principles from the servo mechanism design, I developed a revolutionary energy storage system that could dramatically improve battery efficiency for electric vehicles. The technology represented a potential breakthrough even more significant than my original Titan Industries license. Working in my expanded home laboratory, now equipped with industrial-grade testing equipment and prototype manufacturing capabilities, I felt the familiar excitement of approaching a major discovery. The energy storage system performed beyond my most optimistic projections, achieving power density improvements that could revolutionize electric transportation. Major automotive manufacturers would certainly be interested in licensing this technology. But unlike my first invention, this one was being developed in an environment of family wealth and social expectations that complicated my relationship with the work itself. Victoria assumed that any new invention would follow the same path as the servo mechanism: rapid commercialization, substantial licensing fees, additional validation of our elevated status. She'd already begun planning how we'd spend the anticipated profits from my next big success. The pressure to repeat my earlier commercial achievement felt suffocating in ways I hadn't experienced during the more desperate circumstances surrounding my first breakthrough. Working in a garage with limited resources had fostered creativity born of necessity and passion. Working in a well-funded laboratory while managing social obligations felt more like a job than a calling, more about meeting expectations than exploring possibilities. Emma recognized this difference during one of our technical discussions about the energy storage project. "Dad," she observed, "you seem more stressed about this invention than you were about the servo mechanism, even though everything should be easier now that we have money and equipment. Why is that?" Her perceptive question forced me to examine my own motivation more carefully. The first invention had been driven by pure curiosity and desire to solve an interesting problem. This second project carried psychological baggage about maintaining our lifestyle, justifying Victoria's newfound respect for my work, and proving that my success hadn't been accidental. The additional pressure was entirely self-imposed, but no less real for being psychological rather than financial. "I think success can make you afraid of failure in ways you never worried about before," I explained to Emma. "When we were struggling financially, I had nothing to lose by trying ambitious projects. Now that we're wealthy, there's pressure to maintain that success. It changes how you approach problems." Emma nodded thoughtfully, filing away another lesson about the complexity of achievement and its psychological implications. Her mature understanding of these dynamics gave me hope that she would navigate her own future successes with greater wisdom than I'd initially demonstrated. She was learning from watching my struggles with prosperity rather than having to discover these challenges independently. The energy storage system patent application process proved more complex than my servo mechanism had been, involving multiple international filings and extensive technical documentation to establish priority claims. Patent attorneys cautioned that major corporations were aggressively pursuing similar technologies, making it crucial to establish clear intellectual property protection before approaching potential licensees. Victoria became impatient with this lengthy legal process, eager to announce another major success that would validate our continued ascension in social and economic circles. She pushed for premature disclosure of the technology's potential, suggesting press interviews and industry conference presentations that could have compromised our patent position. Her focus on publicity over protection revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of how innovation actually worked. I had to repeatedly explain that rushing to publicize an invention before securing legal protection could destroy its commercial value entirely. Major corporations had teams of engineers capable of developing competing technologies once they understood the basic principles involved. Discretion during development was essential for maintaining competitive advantage. These disagreements about timing and publicity reflected our different priorities and risk tolerance. Victoria wanted immediate recognition that would enhance our social status, while I understood that substantial rewards required patient adherence to proper legal and technical processes. Her impatience threatened to undermine the very success she was so eager to celebrate. The strain of managing these competing pressures while pursuing demanding technical work began affecting my physical and mental health in ways I hadn't experienced during my garage workshop days. Chronic stress about meeting commercial expectations, combined with social obligations that drained my energy for creative thinking, left me feeling exhausted and creatively blocked. For the first time since beginning my serious invention work, I found myself questioning whether the rewards of success justified its psychological costs. Money had solved our financial problems, but created new forms of pressure that were potentially more damaging than simple economic uncertainty had been. Poverty had been stressful, but it had also provided clarity about priorities and motivation that wealth seemed to complicate. Emma recognized this difference during one of our technical discussions about the energy storage project. "Dad," she observed, "you seem more stressed about this invention than you were about the servo mechanism, even though everything should be easier now that we have money and equipment. Why is that?" Her perceptive question forced me to examine my own motivation more carefully. The first invention had been driven by pure curiosity and desire to solve an interesting problem. This second project carried psychological baggage about maintaining our lifestyle, justifying Victoria's newfound respect for my work, and proving that my success hadn't been accidental. The additional pressure was entirely self-imposed, but no less real for being psychological rather than financial. "I think success can make you afraid of failure in ways you never worried about before," I explained to Emma. "When we were struggling financially, I had nothing to lose by trying ambitious projects. Now that we're wealthy, there's pressure to maintain that success. It changes how you approach problems."
Emma nodded thoughtfully, filing away another lesson about the complexity of achievement and its psychological implications. Her mature understanding of these dynamics gave me hope that she would navigate her own future successes with greater wisdom than I'd initially demonstrated. She was learning from watching my struggles with prosperity rather than having to discover these challenges independently. The energy storage system patent application process proved more complex than my servo mechanism had been, involving multiple international filings and extensive technical documentation to establish priority claims. Patent attorneys cautioned that major corporations were aggressively pursuing similar technologies, making it crucial to establish clear intellectual property protection before approaching potential licensees. Victoria became impatient with this lengthy legal process, eager to announce another major success that would validate our continued ascension in social and economic circles. She pushed for premature disclosure of the technology's potential, suggesting press interviews and
Emma, with her characteristic perceptiveness, noticed my deteriorating mood and asked direct questions that forced me to confront what was happening. "Dad," she said during one of our evening walks around our upscale neighborhood, "you seem unhappy even though we have everything we ever wanted. Are you okay?" Her concern was genuine and well-founded. I was struggling with depression that seemed absurd given our transformed circumstances. How could I explain to my daughter that success had created problems I'd never anticipated? That achieving my dreams had somehow made me less rather than more satisfied with my life? "I think I'm learning that getting what you want doesn't automatically make you happy," I said carefully. "Wealth solved certain problems but created others. I'm still figuring out how to be successful without losing the things that made me want to succeed in the first place." Emma accepted this explanation with the wisdom of someone who'd observed adult complexity without yet experiencing it personally. She'd watched her parents struggle with prosperity in ways that seemed unnecessary and self-defeating. Her questions helped me recognize that I needed to make conscious choices about how to structure my life going forward, rather than simply reacting to changing circumstances. The realization that I needed to actively manage my relationship with success rather than being passively managed by it led to important decisions about my priorities and commitments. I began declining social obligations that didn't align with my values or interests, despite Victoria's objections about social expectations and community responsibilities. I established firmer boundaries between my technical work and our social calendar, protecting creative time from well-meaning but counterproductive interruptions. Most importantly, I recommitted to pursuing innovation for its intrinsic value rather than its commercial potential. The energy storage system project would continue, but I would approach it with the same curiosity-driven focus that had made my garage workshop days so satisfying. Financial success was a welcome byproduct of good technical work, but it couldn't be allowed to become the primary motivation. This philosophical shift required renegotiating my relationship with Victoria, who'd become accustomed to viewing my work primarily through the lens of social and economic advancement. I needed her to understand that my continued productivity depended on maintaining the passion and creativity that had produced our initial success, even if that meant disappointing her social ambitions occasionally. The conversation where I explained these boundaries was one of our most important since the night she'd attacked my work in the garage. Victoria listened with apparent understanding, but I could see her struggling to accept that my priorities might not align perfectly with her vision of how wealthy, successful couples should behave. "Marcus," she said finally, "I want you to be happy and creative, but I also want us to make the most of the opportunities our success has created. Can't we find ways to do both?" Her question was fair and reasonable, reflecting genuine concern for my well-being combined with legitimate desire to enjoy the fruits of our achievements. The challenge was creating balance between these competing needs without sacrificing the essential elements that made meaningful work possible. The solution we developed involved more explicit negotiation about time allocation and social commitments, with Victoria taking primary responsibility for maintaining our community relationships while I focused on technical development with minimal interference. This arrangement wasn't perfect, but it provided structure for managing the competing demands of success without completely sacrificing either personal fulfillment or social integration. Over the following months, this division of labor proved workable, if not entirely comfortable. Victoria excelled at philanthropic leadership and social networking, activities that genuinely matched her skills and interests. I made steady progress on the energy storage project while maintaining selective engagement with community activities that specifically required technical expertise. Emma thrived in this more stable environment, pursuing her own advanced studies while observing how her parents had learned to navigate the complexities of sudden wealth. She was developing into a remarkably mature young woman who understood both the opportunities and obligations that success could create. The energy storage system testing continued to exceed projections, with performance improvements that would revolutionize electric vehicle capabilities and renewable energy storage applications. 3 major automotive manufacturers had expressed preliminary interest in licensing discussions, suggesting that this invention could prove even more valuable than my original servo mechanism design. But unlike my first success, this achievement felt more measured and sustainable. I'd learned to manage the psychological pressures of high expectations while maintaining the creative curiosity that made innovation possible. Victoria had developed her own area of expertise and accomplishment that didn't depend on my technical work for validation. We were becoming more ourselves rather than trying to transform into different people. The final patent approvals arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, officially protecting the intellectual property that represented 2 years of intensive development work. Unlike the euphoric celebration that had accompanied my first licensing deal, this milestone felt more like quiet satisfaction than overwhelming triumph. Success was becoming a more natural and integrated part of our lives rather than a shocking transformation of our circumstances. Victoria's response to the patent news reflected her own evolution over the past several years. Instead of immediate focus on commercial potential and social implications, she asked technical questions about how the invention worked and what problems it solved. Her genuine curiosity about my work represented progress in our relationship that money alone couldn't have achieved. Emma's reaction was characteristically thoughtful and forward-looking. "Dad," she said, "this invention could really help reduce carbon emissions and make clean transportation more practical. That's the kind of work that matters beyond just making money. I'm proud that you're solving problems that could help the environment." Her perspective reminded me why I'd pursued engineering in the first place, the desire to create solutions that would make people's lives better in tangible ways. Commercial success was gratifying, but knowing that my work could contribute to environmental sustainability provided deeper satisfaction than financial rewards alone. The licensing negotiations for the energy storage technology proceeded more smoothly than my first experience with Titan Industries, partly because I now had legal representation and business experience that enabled more sophisticated deal-making. 3 automotive manufacturers submitted competitive offers, ultimately resulting in a licensing agreement worth $28 million plus substantial ongoing royalties. This second major success established me definitively as a serious inventor rather than someone who'd achieved a single fortunate breakthrough. The combination of proven track record and innovative pipeline made me an attractive partner for companies seeking technological advantages in competitive markets. I'd become someone whose ideas were taken seriously by major corporations and industry analysts. But more important than external validation was internal satisfaction with work that aligned with my values and interests. The energy storage project had solved genuine technical challenges while contributing to environmental goals that mattered to me personally. Success felt earned rather than accidental, sustainable rather than precarious. Victoria's evolution during this period proved as significant as my own professional development. Her initial transformation from harsh critic to enthusiastic supporter had been reactive, based on surprise at my commercial success rather than deeper understanding of my work's value. Over time, she developed genuine appreciation for innovation and problem-solving that transcended purely financial considerations. This growth was most evident in how she discussed my work with friends and colleagues.
Instead of focusing exclusively on licensing deals and financial returns, Victoria began explaining the technical problems I'd solved and their practical applications. Emma's reaction was characteristically thoughtful and forward-looking. "Dad," she said, "this invention could really help reduce carbon emissions and make clean transportation more practical. That's the kind of work that matters beyond just making money. I'm proud that you're solving problems that could help the environment." Her perspective reminded me why I'd pursued engineering in the first place, the desire to create solutions that would make people's lives better in tangible ways. Commercial success was gratifying, but knowing that my work could contribute to environmental sustainability provided deeper satisfaction than financial rewards alone. The licensing negotiations for the energy storage technology proceeded more smoothly than my first experience with Titan Industries, partly because I now had legal representation and business experience that enabled more sophisticated deal-making. 3 automotive manufacturers submitted competitive offers, ultimately resulting in a licensing agreement worth $28 million, plus substantial ongoing royalties. This second major success established me definitively as a serious inventor, rather than someone who'd achieved a single fortunate breakthrough. The combination of proven track record and innovative pipeline made me an attractive partner for companies seeking technological advantages in competitive markets. I'd become someone whose ideas were taken seriously by major corporations and industry analysts. But more important than external validation was internal satisfaction with work that aligned with my values and interests. The energy storage project had solved genuine technical challenges while contributing to environmental goals that mattered to me personally. Success felt earned rather than accidental, sustainable rather than precarious. Victoria's evolution during this period proved as significant.
She'd educated herself enough to speak intelligently about servo mechanisms and energy storage systems, demonstrating respect for the intellectual content of my achievements rather than just their commercial outcomes. Emma observed this change in her mother with approval, recognizing it as evidence of authentic rather than performed support. During a family dinner celebrating the energy storage licensing deal, Emma made a toast that captured the significance of our collective growth over the previous few years. "To Dad," she said, raising her glass with mock formality, "for proving that persistence and creativity can overcome any obstacle, including family members who don't understand engineering. And to Mom, for learning to appreciate innovative thinking even when it's happening in your own garage. And to all of us, for figuring out how to be successful without losing what makes us a family." Her words brought tears to my eyes, not because they marked the end of our struggles, but because they demonstrated that we'd learned to struggle more effectively. Wealth had created new challenges, but it had also provided resources for addressing them constructively rather than destructively. We were still learning, still growing, still working toward better understanding of ourselves and each other. The success story that had begun with Victoria's cruel prediction about my future had evolved into something more complex and ultimately more satisfying than simple vindication. I'd proven her wrong about my potential, but more importantly, we'd all learned valuable lessons about supporting each other's dreams even when we didn't fully understand them. Looking back at that night in the garage when Victoria told me I would never amount to anything, I could see how her words had served as a catalyst for determination I might not have discovered otherwise. Her lack of faith had forced me to develop unshakable belief in my own abilities, creating psychological resilience that proved crucial during the most challenging phases of development. In an unexpected way, Victoria's early criticism had contributed to our eventual success by eliminating any possibility of external validation, substituting for internal conviction. I'd learned to pursue meaningful work regardless of other people's opinions, a lesson that served me well during both failure and prosperity. The garage workshop where my first breakthrough had occurred remained largely unchanged despite our upgraded circumstances. I'd built a modern laboratory for advanced prototyping, but I continued returning to that original space when I needed to think creatively about particularly challenging problems. The modest surroundings reminded me of the passion and curiosity that had made innovation possible when resources were limited and expectations were low. Emma often joined me in the garage for informal discussions about engineering principles and problem-solving strategies. These conversations were among the most satisfying aspects of my success, knowing that I'd passed on not just financial security, but also appreciation for technical creativity and innovation. She was developing into the kind of person who would pursue meaningful challenges regardless of their commercial potential, someone who understood that the best work came from intrinsic motivation rather than external pressure. Victoria occasionally visited the garage as well, though her presence there carried complex emotional history that we were still processing together. The space where she'd once delivered her cruelest criticism had become the foundation of our family's prosperity, transforming the memory of that painful confrontation into something more nuanced and ultimately constructive. Standing together in the garage one evening as I explained my next project concept to Emma, Victoria made an observation that demonstrated how much we'd all grown since those early days of struggle and doubt. "Marcus," she said, looking around at the organized chaos of technical drawings and prototype components, "I finally understand why this place is so important to you. It's not just where you work on inventions, it's where you become the person you're meant to be. I should have recognized that years ago instead of trying to change you into someone else." Her apology was more meaningful than any she'd offered during our initial conflicts because it reflected genuine understanding rather than mere acknowledgement of being wrong about commercial outcomes. Victoria had learned to appreciate the intrinsic value of creative work rather than simply accepting its financial benefits. This shift in perspective opened possibilities for deeper connection and mutual support that money alone couldn't have created. The third major invention I developed, a water purification system that could provide clean drinking water in disaster areas and developing regions, represented the culmination of lessons learned during our journey from struggle to success. Unlike my previous projects, this one was motivated primarily by humanitarian rather than commercial considerations, though it also proved to have significant market potential. Working on technology designed to save lives rather than generate profits restored my connection to engineering as a form of service rather than merely a path to wealth. Victoria supported this project enthusiastically from the beginning, understanding that meaningful work could justify the time and energy required for breakthrough innovation. Her evolution from critic to genuine partner in my creative process felt like the most significant achievement of our transformed circumstances. Emma's involvement in the water purification project as a research assistant during her gap year before MIT provided opportunities for technical collaboration that strengthened our relationship while advancing important humanitarian goals. Working together on solutions to global water scarcity reminded me why I'd pursued engineering in the first place, and why success without purpose felt hollow and unsustainable. The patent application for the water purification system included provisions for reduced-cost licensing in developing countries, ensuring that life-saving technology would be accessible to populations most in need of clean water access. This approach balanced commercial viability with social responsibility, creating a sustainable model for innovation that served both business and humanitarian objectives. Victoria's response to this socially conscious approach to invention reflected her continued growth in understanding the relationship between meaningful work and personal fulfillment. Instead of focusing primarily on potential profits, she became actively involved in identifying humanitarian organizations that could benefit from the technology. Her business and social skills proved invaluable for connecting technical innovations with practical applications that could save lives. The collaboration between Victoria and me on humanitarian applications for my inventions marked a turning point in our marriage that went beyond financial success or social recognition. For the first time since our early years together, we were working towards shared goals that aligned with both our individual strengths and our common values. Victoria's networking abilities and business acumen complemented my technical expertise in ways that neither of us could have achieved independently. Emma's graduation from MIT with highest honors in mechanical engineering provided a moment of pure family pride untainted by the complex emotions that had surrounded our earlier successes. Standing in the audience as our daughter accepted multiple academic awards, I felt the deep satisfaction of knowing she'd achieved excellence through her own merit rather than inherited advantage.
The scholarship programs I'd established had helped dozens of other students pursue similar paths, multiplying the impact of my inventions beyond their immediate commercial applications. Victoria's transformation during Emma's college years proved as remarkable as any technical breakthrough I'd achieved in my laboratory. She'd developed genuine expertise in nonprofit management and humanitarian logistics, skills that proved essential for translating my water purification technology into practical aid programs. Her work coordinating international development projects demonstrated capabilities I'd never recognized during our early conflicts about my garage workshop activities. The success of our water purification initiative, which provided clean drinking water to over 50,000 people in its first year of operation, felt more meaningful than any licensing deal I'd ever negotiated. Receiving letters from village leaders in Kenya describing how our technology had eliminated waterborne diseases in their communities provided satisfaction that transcended financial achievement. This was engineering as service to humanity rather than merely commercial enterprise. Victoria framed one of those letters in our Alma office, a gesture that symbolized her complete evolution from someone who'd viewed my technical work as selfish escapism to someone who understood its potential for positive social impact. The woman who'd once told me I would never amount to anything now proudly explained to visitors how our family's innovations are saving lives around the world. Emma's decision to spend her post-graduation year working with our humanitarian technology programs instead of immediately pursuing graduate school reflected values we'd successfully transmitted despite the challenges of our journey to prosperity. She possessed technical skills to develop breakthrough innovations combined with social consciousness to ensure they served purposes beyond profit generation. Watching her explain water purification principles to aid workers in Guatemala, I felt profound gratitude for how our struggles had ultimately strengthened rather than damaged our family relationships. The fourth major invention I completed, a revolutionary solar panel efficiency system that could triple energy output from existing photovoltaic installations, represented the synthesis of everything I'd learned about balancing technical innovation with commercial viability and social responsibility. From the project's inception, Victoria and Emma were integral partners in development planning, ensuring that humanitarian applications would be prioritized alongside commercial licensing opportunities. This collaborative approach to invention proved more satisfying than my previous individual efforts, demonstrating how success had enabled new forms of creative partnership rather than simply providing financial rewards. Victoria's business insights prevented costly development mistakes that could have delayed market introduction, while Emma's fresh engineering perspective identified improvement possibilities I might have overlooked. We were functioning as a genuine team for the first time in our marriage. Emma's graduation from MIT with highest honors in mechanical engineering provided a moment of pure family pride untainted by the complex emotions that had surrounded our earlier.
The solar efficiency system's patent application included innovative provisions for open-source licensing in regions where traditional energy infrastructure was inadequate or non-existent. This approach balanced profit generation with global access to clean energy technology, creating sustainable business models that could serve both shareholders and underserved populations. The legal framework we developed became a template for other inventors seeking to commercialize humanitarian technologies. Major energy companies competed aggressively for exclusive licensing rights, ultimately resulting in a consortium deal worth $67 million plus substantial ongoing royalties tied to global solar installation rates. This third major commercial success established me definitively as one of America's most successful independent inventors, but more importantly, it proved that profitable innovation could serve humanitarian purposes without sacrificing business viability. Victoria's role in negotiating the consortium agreement demonstrated skills I'd never imagined she possessed during our early years of marriage. Her ability to balance competing corporate interests while protecting our humanitarian licensing provisions proved crucial for achieving terms that satisfied both commercial and social objectives. The woman who'd once dismissed my work as childish tinkering had become an essential partner in complex international business negotiations. Emma's contributions to the solar efficiency project extended beyond technical assistance to include strategic thinking about global energy policy and environmental sustainability. Her generation's perspective on climate change and renewable energy influenced design decisions that made our technology more relevant for addressing long-term environmental challenges. She was developing into the kind of leader who could bridge technical innovation with policy implementation in ways my generation had struggled to achieve. The recognition that accompanied our solar efficiency breakthrough included invitations to speak at international conferences on clean energy and sustainable development. Unlike my earlier speaking engagements, which had focused primarily on technical achievement and commercial success, these presentations emphasized the social impact potential of well-designed innovation. I was learning to communicate about engineering as a form of public service rather than merely individual accomplishment. Victoria's presence at these conferences as an equal partner rather than a supportive spouse reflected how dramatically our relationship had evolved since those early days of conflict and misunderstanding. She delivered presentations about humanitarian technology deployment with expertise that commanded respect from aid organizations and development professionals worldwide. Her transformation from harsh critic to knowledgeable advocate felt like a miracle I'd never dared hope might be possible. The establishment of the Hendricks Foundation for Humanitarian Innovation provided a permanent institutional framework for continuing our work at the intersection of technology and social service. With an endowment of $25 million from our licensing revenues, the foundation could fund research projects, support humanitarian deployments, and train the next generation of socially conscious engineers without dependence on continued commercial success. Emma's appointment as the Foundation's first research director represented both family continuity and institutional independence, ensuring that our work would continue beyond my active involvement while maintaining the values and priorities we developed together. Her vision for expanding humanitarian technology development included partnerships with universities, aid organizations, and developing nation governments that could multiply our impact exponentially. The Foundation's first major initiative, a competition for student inventors developing technologies to address global poverty and environmental challenges, attracted over 3,000 participants from universities worldwide. Judging these submissions reminded me of my own early days as an inventor, when passion and creativity mattered more than resources or recognition. Supporting young innovators felt like completing a circle that had begun in my garage workshop decades earlier. Victoria's leadership of the Foundation's humanitarian deployment programs proved as innovative as any technical breakthrough I'd achieved in my laboratory. Her systems for identifying communities most in need of technological assistance, coordinating with local leaders, and training users for sustainable technology adoption became models copied by other international development organizations. She'd found her calling in work that combined business skills with humanitarian purpose. The personal satisfaction of watching Victoria discover and develop capabilities she'd never known she possessed proved as rewarding as any patent approval or licensing deal I'd ever celebrated. The woman who'd told me I would never amount to anything had become someone whose own achievements commanded international respect and recognition. Our journey together had transformed us both in ways that individual success never could have accomplished. Emma's development into a confident and capable young leader provided daily evidence that our struggles had ultimately strengthened rather than damaged our family bonds. She approached challenges with determination and creativity that reflected lessons learned from watching her parents navigate conflict and prosperity with varying degrees of wisdom and grace. Her generation would accomplish things we could barely imagine because they'd learned from our mistakes and built upon our discoveries. The fifth and most ambitious project I undertook, a comprehensive waste recycling system that could convert almost any organic material into useful products, represented the culmination of everything I'd learned about innovation, collaboration, and social responsibility. From conception through development, the project involved Victoria and Emma as equal partners, drawing upon their expertise in business strategy and sustainable development to ensure maximum positive impact. This recycling system promised to address multiple global challenges simultaneously, reducing landfill waste, creating renewable energy sources, producing clean water, and generating useful materials for manufacturing applications.
The technology's potential applications ranged from municipal waste management in developed countries to sanitation solutions for refugee camps and disaster relief areas. It was engineering at its most ambitious and socially relevant. The development process required 3 years of intensive collaboration between our family team and research partners at universities and nonprofit organizations worldwide. Unlike my earlier individual efforts, this project demanded coordination between multiple disciplines and stakeholder groups, skills that Victoria's humanitarian work had prepared her to manage effectively. She became the project's operational leader while I focused on technical development, and Emma coordinated environmental impact assessments. Patent applications for the waste recycling system required international coordination across 17 countries, establishing intellectual property protection that would enable both commercial licensing and humanitarian deployment. The legal complexity of managing such extensive patent portfolios would have been impossible without Victoria's business expertise and Emma's policy research. We'd evolved into a true partnership where individual strengths combine to achieve results impossible through individual effort. Major corporations and government agencies competed intensively for licensing rights to various applications of our waste recycling technology. The eventual licensing agreements generated over $100 million in immediate payments, plus ongoing royalties that would fund our humanitarian programs indefinitely. But more importantly, the technology's deployment began addressing waste management crises in cities worldwide, while providing sustainable solutions for refugee populations and disaster recovery efforts. Victoria's coordination of humanitarian deployments proved as revolutionary as the technology itself, establishing new standards for how international aid organizations could introduce and maintain advanced technological solutions in challenging environments. Her protocols for community engagement, local training, and sustainable maintenance adoption became models copied by other international development organizations. She'd found her calling in work that combined business skills with humanitarian purpose. The personal satisfaction of watching Victoria discover and develop capabilities she'd never known she possessed proved as rewarding as any patent approval or licensing deal I'd ever celebrated. The woman who told me I would never amount to anything had become someone whose own achievements commanded international respect and recognition. Our journey together had transformed us both in ways that individual success never could have accomplished. Emma's development into a confident and capable young leader provided daily evidence that our struggles had ultimately strengthened rather than damaged our family bonds. She approached challenges with determination and creativity that reflected lessons learned from watching her parents navigate conflict and prosperity with varying degrees of wisdom and grace. Her generation would accomplish things we could barely imagine because they'd learned from our mistakes and built upon our discoveries. The fifth and most ambitious project I undertook, a comprehensive waste recycling system that could convert almost any organic material into useful products, represented the culmination of everything I'd learned about innovation, collaboration, and social responsibility. From conception through development, the project involved Victoria and Emma as equal partners, drawing upon their expertise in business strategy and sustainable development to ensure maximum positive impact. This recycling system promised to address multiple global challenges simultaneously, reducing landfill waste, creating renewable energy sources, producing clean water, and generating useful materials for manufacturing applications. The technology's potential applications ranged from municipal waste management in developed countries to sanitation solutions for refugee camps and disaster relief areas. It was engineering at its most ambitious and socially relevant. The development process required 3 years of intensive collaboration between our family team and research partners at universities and nonprofit organizations worldwide. Unlike my earlier individual efforts, this project demanded coordination between multiple disciplines and stakeholder groups, skills that Victoria's humanitarian work had prepared.
Emma's integration of technical excellence with social consciousness represented the next generation's approach to innovation, viewing engineering not as a path to personal wealth, but as a tool for addressing global challenges that threatened humanity's long-term sustainability. Her generation would accomplish things we could barely envision because they'd learned from our struggles and built upon our discoveries. The garage where my first breakthrough had occurred remained largely unchanged despite our transformed circumstances, serving as a reminder of where our journey had begun and the passion that had made everything else possible. I continued returning to that space when I needed to think creatively about particularly challenging problems, surrounded by the memories of determination and discovery that had overcome doubt and criticism. Standing in that garage one evening as I contemplated my next project, I reflected on Victoria's words from years earlier when she'd told me I would never amount to anything. Those cruel predictions had served as a catalyst for determination I might never have discovered otherwise, forcing me to develop unshakable belief in my own abilities when external support was unavailable. In an unexpected way, Victoria's early criticism had contributed to our eventual success by eliminating any possibility of external validation substituting for internal conviction. I'd learned to pursue meaningful work regardless of other people's opinions, a lesson that proved invaluable during both failure and prosperity. The pain she'd caused had ultimately strengthened rather than broken my resolve to create something significant. The foundation we'd established would continue supporting humanitarian innovation long after my active involvement ended, ensuring that our work served purposes beyond our own family's achievement. Emma's leadership would guide the organization in directions I couldn't anticipate, drawing upon lessons learned from our journey while addressing challenges we'd never faced. Victoria's transformation from harsh critic to essential partner represented the kind of personal growth that prosperity could enable when approached with wisdom and humility. She discovered capabilities she'd never known she possessed, developing expertise that commanded international respect while contributing to solutions for global problems. Her evolution proved that people could change fundamentally when circumstances demanded growth and learning. The waste recycling technology's continued deployment in communities worldwide provided ongoing evidence that engineering could serve humanitarian purposes without sacrificing commercial viability. Our licensing agreements ensured sustainable funding for continued innovation, while making life-saving technologies accessible to populations most in need of improved sanitation and waste management. Emma's research on the environmental impact of our technologies was influencing policy decisions affecting millions of people, demonstrating how individual inventions could catalyze broader social changes when properly supported and implemented. Her generation understood connections between technical innovation and policy implementation that my generation had often overlooked. The final major recognition of our work came with invitation to address the United Nations General Assembly about the role of humanitarian technology in addressing global challenges. Standing before representatives from every nation on Earth, I reflected on the journey that had brought our family from a garage workshop in suburban America to international leadership in sustainable development. Victoria's introduction of my presentation emphasized our collaborative approach to innovation, crediting the partnership that had made our achievements possible while acknowledging the personal growth we'd all experienced during our journey to success. Her words reflected complete transformation from someone who'd viewed my work as selfish escapism to someone who understood engineering as essential for humanity's future. Emma's closing remarks about the next generation's responsibility for continuing humanitarian innovation demonstrated wisdom and determination that promised even greater achievements ahead. She spoke with confidence and vision that reflected lessons learned from watching her parents navigate conflict and prosperity while maintaining focus on meaningful work that served purposes beyond personal advancement. Looking back at Victoria's prediction that I would never amount to anything, I could see how those words had served as the foundation for everything we'd accomplished together. Her cruel criticism had forced me to develop internal conviction that proved essential for overcoming every subsequent obstacle and challenge. The pain she'd caused had ultimately catalyzed growth that made our current achievements possible. The garage workshop where our journey had begun would remain a reminder of passion and determination that had overcome doubt and criticism through persistent effort and unwavering belief in the possibility of positive change. Future inventors would need similar determination to address challenges we could barely imagine, drawing upon lessons learned from our struggles and building upon our discoveries.
Victoria's complete transformation from harsh critic to essential partner proved that relationships could survive fundamental disagreements when approached with patience, forgiveness, and commitment to mutual growth. Our marriage had been strengthened rather than damaged by the challenges we faced together, creating bonds that would endure long after our individual achievements were forgotten. Emma's development into a leader capable of addressing global challenges through innovative technology and enlightened policy provided hope for humanity's future. Her generation would inherit problems we'd helped create, but also tools and wisdom we'd developed for them. The foundation we'd established would support her work and continue our mission long after we were gone. The words Victoria had spoken in anger and frustration years earlier had become the prologue to a success story that exceeded anything we dared dream possible. Her prediction that I would never amount to anything had catalyzed determination that transformed not just our financial circumstances, but our understanding of meaningful work and its potential for positive social impact. Standing together in our garage one final time before converting it into a memorial workspace for future inventors, Victoria offered the apology that completed our journey from conflict to collaboration. "Marcus," she said, looking around at the space where everything had begun, "I was wrong about everything that mattered. You've amounted to more than I ever imagined possible, and I'm grateful for the persistence that proved me wrong." Her words provided closure for wounds that had taken years to heal, acknowledging the magnitude of her early mistakes while celebrating the growth we'd all achieved despite those painful beginnings. The cruel prediction that had once threatened to destroy my confidence had ultimately served as the foundation for achievements that would benefit humanity for generations to come. Emma's presence during this conversation provided continuity between past struggles and future possibilities, representing the next generation's opportunity to build upon our discoveries while avoiding our mistakes. She'd learned lessons about persistence, innovation, and social responsibility that would guide her own contributions to humanity's ongoing challenges and opportunities. The legacy we were leaving extended far beyond individual patents or licensing agreements to include institutional frameworks for continuing humanitarian innovation, educational programs for training socially conscious engineers, and policy recommendations for integrating technological solutions with sustainable development goals. Our work would continue long after our personal involvement ended. Victoria's final words about our journey together captured the transformation we'd all experienced during our progress from garage workshop to global impact. "We started with your determination to prove me wrong," she said, "but we ended with partnership that accomplished things neither of us could have achieved alone." That's the real success story, not the money or recognition, but what we learned about working together. Her insight reflected wisdom gained through years of conflict, growth, forgiveness, and collaboration, demonstrating how relationships could be strengthened rather than damaged by honest acknowledgement of mistakes and commitment to mutual improvement. The harsh words that had begun our story had evolved into understanding and partnership that would endure beyond any individual achievement. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.